Well, I'm pleased to be joined here today again with Grandpa Mike in order to
sure.
teach us a Hebrew word. So
Yes.
share our word that we're studying today as I turn the camera so that everyone can see the word.
Yeah. This is a really precious word. I have the form that is probably most important down here, anha, and it means humility. And anah is the root word, and it means to be humble. And what we're going to look at for just a few minutes is really the biblical concept of humility. I'll read a couple of verses where our word is used. He humbled you and let you be hungry. And the word humbled is anah. He said that I fed you with manna, which you did not know, and your fathers did not know, that he might make you understand that man does not live by bread alone. Boy, that verse ought to sound familiar.
Yeah.
But lives by everything that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Jesus quoted that Deuteronomy passage, Matthew 4:4, and it gives us this sense that God lets us sometimes kind of twist in the wind to verify we're not in charge of our own fate. We are not captains of our own destiny, that we live at the grace, the mercy of God. Then he provides for us, and it should be a humbling thing. And that's what he says here in Deuteronomy. And it's a great verse, Deuteronomy 8:3. Another one, and it may take you a minute to look it up, is in Zephaniah. I have a lot of people when I had, talk about Zephaniah, or we have Palm Sunday here with Zechariah coming up. I mean, these are famous books in their own right, but we don't turn to them. Zephaniah says this, I really love it. Seek the Lord, all you humble of the earth, who have carried out his ordinances. And then I always think this verse reminds me of Micah 6:8. Seek righteousness, seek humility. It uses both forms in the same verse. Perhaps you'll be hidden in the day of the Lord's anger. We talk about humility, and I really want to kind of break up the word into its various parts. There are three words in Hebrew that refer to something that is humble. The first one is shaphael, and it's a word that means to be sunk low, to be defeated. You can kind of watch when a sports team comes to the 2-minute warning or the ninth inning, and you can tell they have accepted that they're not going to win this game. And you can see in the slumped shoulders, the expressions, and they've sunk low. And that is not what God's talking about in our word. The other word is the word kana. And kana actually is in other forms the word Canaan, like the Canaanites. But it talks about a people that have been brought down. They have been conquered. And their humility is defeatism. Neither one of those are the humility that we've read here in Deuteronomy or the word in Zephaniah, and they're used several times, 30, 40 times throughout the Old Testament. This is a word that means to recognize a relative perspective. So we've ever been to, say, the mountains of Colorado, and they are breathtaking. It's just staggering to see the immensity of what is before you and how small you really are. I mean, how tiny a speck we really are before that. And so that kind of humility isn't me thinking myself small. There's actually an arrogance in that. For me to think I can make myself smaller and that you then perceive me as humble. That isn't true. If I can make myself small, I can make myself big. That's an arrogance. True humility is magnifying God to his proper place. And then in proportion, I begin to diminish. I don't diminish myself. I recognize his infinite immensity. And that creates my lesser proportion.
The mountain doesn't shrink.
No, the mountain doesn't shrink. And for me to think that if I'm You know, if I'm 6 foot tall, standing in front of a 10,000 foot peak, 2 miles up, if I crouched down, the mountain didn't get any bigger. It's still 2 miles up. What I need to recognize is to turn around and give due majesty to what that is. Some people have said some great things about this. Let me give you a couple of them. Phillips Brooks, he wrote our favorite little Christmas carol, "O Little Town of Bethlehem." It's a great, great song. He said this: the true way to be humble is not to stoop down until you're smaller than yourself, but to stand at your real height against some higher nature. He recognized that it's not about us making ourselves, self-deprecation is what that's called. And you notice the real sin word that leads that off? Self. It's not about that.
When we were offline, you mentioned about an airplane ride.
Yes. You and I have traveled to Israel together. But could you imagine sitting on an airplane, you know, you're buckled in and everybody's ready, and the pilot gets on and announces that the doors have been closed and we're getting ready to taxi, but he had a confession he wanted to make first. Could you imagine over the intercom, the pilot says, "Now, I really ought to let you know that I'm not really a very good pilot. In fact, I'm not very confident about today. There may be people on this plane that could fly it better than I can." I've heard a lot of sermons start out that way. And somehow we've fallen into that trap that humility is self-deprecation. It is not.
Take us back to the word now again. Ahana means.
Yeah, ahana is the idea that I'm recognizing the greater that I am before. I may be there, but what is far greater, what is absolutely overshadowing, is the presence of God. Humility isn't, and C.S. Lewis said this, I love this line. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, which is self-deprecation. It is thinking of yourself less. My job in humility is not to put Mike down or lie about it. I would hope without arrogance I hope to believe that when I step up to Grace Bible Church on a Sunday morning, that there isn't anybody in that room that is better prepared on that verse than I am. And if I believe there was, I should sit down, shut up, and give them the pulpit. But I make sure by dedication and study and prayer that when we come to Sunday morning and I step up to that desk, that I am completely prepared. And I'm not boasting, but I am there to share God's word. So the more I can point to God's word, which can't be an error, the less I could be an error. And so it's very good. There are some other quotes that I think are important. When we look down on others, you're not actually then looking up either. And humility isn't looking down on yourself or looking down on others, but the word anhava, it is this idea that I am not looking down on myself or down on others, but I am focused on the wonder of looking up into the face of Jehovah. And that is truly humbling. Every time Jesus, we're not worthy, God forgive me, I'm a sinner, you know, all those times when they really were confronted with the divine. That is true biblical humility.
Thank you for sharing that Hebrew word for us, and we look forward to next time.
Thank you.